It's my great pleasure and honor to have our senior United States Senator, Roger Wicker, coming to us from Washington. Hello, Senator Wicker. How are you?
Hey, Lucien. How you doing?
Glad to be doing well. Appreciate your taking the time to be with us. How's Washington?
The House is in session. The Senate went home last night, but I'm sticking around to do a little work before I get back.
Well, I know we've talked about this before, but you obviously pay close attention to what happens at the Department of Defense, the Department of Defense budget being part of that. What are your thoughts on President Biden's budget proposal for DOD for 23?
President Biden's budget proposal is not adequate. We're in a very dangerous situation, not only with Russia. We've seen an unprovoked attack on one of our friends. We are necessarily involved, and we need to give our Ukrainian friends every advantage that they can, but also that the so-called pacing threat is still in the Pacific and with China. And we're just not ready for either one of those challenges. The president's budget doesn't keep up with inflation. Inflation now is about 7%. The president's budget assumes that inflation will be about 2.5%. So it's just based on a fiction. And when you look at the real numbers, we have less security from this budget because we don't even keep up with inflation.
As I understand it, it used to be the policy of the U.S. to attempt to spend and invest enough to ensure we had permanent military superiority in the world. I mean, is the failure of the Biden budget proposal, do you think that's ideologically driven? I mean, is that about accepting American decline on the world stage, or is it just a function of priorities? Maybe that's a false distinction.
I think there's a bit of gamesmanship. I think he expects us to increase military spending. So he's asked for a whole lot of domestic spending, a lot of Green New Deal. And I think he thinks we're going to have to go with what he wants there so he can concede to at least getting us a little ahead of inflation. But look, we are not ready to defend our friends in Taiwan and the Pacific. And this is not anything that's secret. The Rand Corporation has done an analysis, and they say the United States could lose a war against China in the Pacific. So we're going to have to build up our forces to the point where we would win a war against China. And that's the best way to avoid having any sort of conflict in the Pacific. And we're just not there with these numbers. No question about it. The good thing about it is we have Democrats and Republicans on the Armed Services Committee who understand that. Now, there are a bunch out in the Senate as a whole who are not quite as interested in national defense.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, I'm hopeful, as I know you are, that Republicans will retake the Senate in November, that we'll have Roger Wicker will be the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. But in the interim, do you think there's the will among the Democrats who control the Senate and the House, for that matter, to spend enough money to make sure America has enough to protect our allies and our interests around the world?
I think so. But it's going to be difficult. We have to do it kicking and screaming and pushing and pulling. When we passed the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, late last year, finally, so that we wouldn't miss an NDAA for the first time in decades and decades, we actually were able to increase defense spending a little bit. We'll be able to do that, I think. And yes, if Republicans win a majority, in November, I am in line to be chairman of the Armed Services Committee. It's a great tradition that Mississippi has, with John Stennis having served in that position back when he was an incumbent.
Well, it would certainly be great for Mississippi to have the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, but I also think it would be great for America to have Roger Wicker as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, because I do think you get the important role that America, the stabilizing role we play in the world, and the need to spend and prepare for war as a way of avoiding it, which I'm not sure is true of a lot of people on the other side of the aisle up there.
Right. Yeah. It's wonderful that that we have the shipyards and we have the bases from north to south. That's a great economic engine, no question about it. But the main thing is, of course, defending our country, and in so doing, ensuring another generation of peace. So that's the main thing. And we are frankly just not getting the job done. And this disaster in Afghanistan, it not only did it demoralize our troops, it made our people have questions about our commander in chief, but it made a statement worldwide. Is the United States equal to the task of being the leader of the free world? And so there's a lot of stuff we need to rectify. And in the meantime, we need to do whatever we can with our friends in NATO to see that Vladimir Putin is defeated and that our Ukrainian friends win the war and are able to protect their sovereign territory. To me, that's very important for this year, but also for the future of preventing conflicts and preventing this sort of aggression by a European dictator in the future.
Do you think Putin was more comfortable doing this with Joe Biden as president because he saw the sort of weak responses to Russian aggression when Joe Biden was vice president and part of the Obama administration?
I think he made a calculated decision, and also based on Afghanistan. But it's hard to know what goes on in the mind of Vladimir Putin, except that he's gotten away with it. Vladimir Putin is the neighborhood bully who's never gotten a bloody nose. Now, this last 5 weeks, Putin has gotten a bloody nose. He may yet win the war. We don't. The issue is in doubt, but he will not leave this unscathed. And my hat is off. My admiration deep down down to my toes goes to these Ukrainian folks who are doing nothing more than defending their own land and standing up to what we viewed as world superpower. You have to wish them every success, and we need to give them everything we can. And frankly, I think sometimes we've been a little slow pushing stuff not only to Eastern Europe, but getting it across the border to where it can be helpful.
And when you talk about providing support to Ukraine, I mean, is there a limit? I mean, does that go all the way to some sort of no-fly zone enforced by the U.S. and its allies in Ukraine, or is that a bridge too far?
You know, there's a way to do that ground-based, and so here's what I think we should be doing. I think we should facilitate getting the MiGs that our allies have over into Ukraine. Now, the people in our Pentagon say, well, they don't really need them and they got plenty. But that's not what the Ukrainians say. And they're the ones fighting the war. They're the boots on the ground, and they're the ones trying to protect their airspace. So if we have the ability to help get those Polish MiGs and Czech MiGs into Ukraine, we ought to do it and let them make that decision. But also the surface to air protection that we can also help escort across the border into Ukraine is another way to protect the airspace. We would not tolerate a city like Mariupol being shelled to rubble, as the Russians have done. It's nothing strategic about it. They have simply decided to make an example of this city of over 300,000 people. We would not tolerate that, and I think we should give the Ukrainians and facilitate our NATO allies, giving the Ukrainians everything they can so that they can prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. It's an atrocity. It's a war crime here in 2022 that we thought we'd never see in our lifetimes.
Well, Senator Wicker, thank you for all you do for our state generally, and thank you for being such an outspoken advocate for America's role in the world and the importance of us supporting the people and the leadership of Ukraine and continuing to make sure our military has what they need to be an effective fighting force around the world. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Lucien, and tell Gerard hello, and look forward to seeing y'all back home soon.